Hey fellow golfers, I'm going to give you some pointers and tips on the wedge game. I brought my pitching wedge with me. The first thing you really ought to know about is your bounce. Your bounce is this piece here on the wedge. Because bounce generally is your friend, especially if you're on soft surfaces. The more bounce, the better, because it allows you to get through the turf. The second thing is, which is also key, is posture. It's amazing how so many people don't pay attention to posture, especially as in the short game and in the wedge, you want to be a little closer than you are for your mid or longer irons, and of course certainly for your woods. So you want a slightly more upright posture, and you want your hands to be essentially below your shoulders. Also for your wedge, you then tend to put your hand down on the grip, equally for more control, but also because you're closer. So that's really a key issue. So to illustrate, from the back, so slightly closer to your ball, hands below your shoulder, hands down on the club. Another key factor is to have your ball in the center of your stance without too much club lean. If you have too much club lean, you'll be digging too much into the ground. So a little bit of shaft lean, but essentially the ball in the center of your stance. Good posture, nice grip down, nice slow takeaway. Ball in the center of your stance. Not too much shaft lean. Nice slow takeaway. Good posture. And a nice shot. The next key tip is don't try to scoop. Because it's a wedge, you think, okay, I'm trying to hit it up in the air. Let the loft of the club do the work. You do want to hit it slightly down in the ball so that in fact the loft does the work. The loft does the work. So you're not trying to scoop it up in the air, which is what a lot of people do. A lot of amateurs try to scoop it up in the air and then hit it fat or hit it thin, and certainly won't get the accuracy that you need. So, and that starts with your practice swing. Get used to that slight bounce in the position of the ball. Also is your distance control, because obviously with your short game and short clubs, distance is everything. So with the wedge game, the distance difference really for that same swing is how far you turn back. If it's a short little wedge, you may want to do it below the belt line. So let me illustrate the short one. Okay, that was about 50 yards. My pitching wedge is usually 110 or so. So the full shot was double that. Let me try an even shorter one. So again, I go down further on the grip because I'm just doing the belt line. That was about 25 yards. Essentially using my belt line to control my swing and therefore the distance. An even shorter one. Another key aspect for that shorter swing, in case you didn't notice it, is for the fuller swing. I'm doing a much wider stance, my hands a little bit further up in the grip. For the shorter one, my hands are much more together to keep more control, less lower body movement, and hands a little bit even further down. So feet closer together for the shorter wedge shot. Feet wider, hands further up in the club, a bit further away for the fuller shot. Length of the backswing relative to the forward follow through. Really key. You really should try to make it roughly equal, as you saw earlier, of the belt to belt for the shorter one, because the tendency is, if you go too short, you want to try to accelerate through, and then you're not going to control the ball more. If you go too far, the tendency would be that you decelerate as you come down. So you want a much more even flow for the shorter one and for the longer one. Illustrate both. Okay, and that keeps that tempo and rhythm the same. Let me illustrate the full shot. If you're left-handed, your left hand. If you're right-handed, your right hand. Think about throwing the club down. Throwing the club down. With your lofted wedge, you want to be throwing your club down. Think about throwing the ball down. Throwing the ball down. So let me illustrate even with the shorter one. Throw it down. Another key issue is about your hands and wrists. Generally, it's not a good idea to have too much wrist because it's harder to control and harder to get out of sequence, because you really have to have the same position back at impact. Same applies to chipping. You'll have seen, I'm sure, some lessons where it's more the body movement rather than it's your body pivot that turns as opposed to your wrist. If you do too much wrist, you will launch it higher, you'll come down steeper and you'll have more spin. But you really need to have accuracy in the back and transition back movement so that you're back at the right position. I'll show you both. More wrist, less body movement. Less wrist, more body movement. A lot of wrist, less wrist. Much more control. Finally, really important to calibrate your distances. The short game is all about control and distance, because those are your scoring clubs. So not only should you be measuring your full shot distance, but do a 3/4 shot distance, that belt to belt distance, and even a little chip distance. That'll give you the versatility with that same club. This is just a pitching wedge. So let me show you. Okay, that's maybe 12-15 yards. That is 60 yards. And that's my 110 yards. So, calibrating your distances for your different swings back and through, for your different positioning, is key to a great short game. So those three positions again. Again. So you get the idea. Shorter distances, back and through with the same amounts, feet closer together, hands further down the wrist, on the grip for those short shots. Halfway, 3/4 shots, full shot.